Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Bob Mackin, award-winning investigative reporter and publisher of TheBreaker.News. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, the North Shore of Vancouver, a unique situation. They did have a mega sewer plant on the line, or they were looking at one. Is that going to be built?
Well, it's in the process right now, but not much is happening down at the site in Pemberton, on the site of the former BC rail station. It's now a Metro Vancouver construction site that's being run by a very large company originating from Spain called Acciona Infrastructure. And they've got a design-build agreement with Metro Vancouver that is funded by us through various levels of government to build a new sewage treatment plant, secondary sewage treatment plant, to replace the one that has existed for decades near the Lionsgate Bridge on Squamish Nation land. This project is not going very well, and there's a lack of transparency that is just speaking decibels in volumes, that nobody really wants to take charge of this project and tell me and tell the public what the heck is going wrong. April 10th is when there was a stop work order. The North Shore News reported on that last week. I reported on New Angle this week, exclusive story, that the project manager, Paul Dufault, has gone somewhere else. He's gone to a company called Jacobs, which is a major infrastructure construction company, to be their municipal infrastructure guy. And Jacobs' office in Burnaby at Metrotown is one tower away from the Metro Tower where the Metro Vancouver Regional District Government is. And nobody in that tower, Saab Dhaliwal is the chair, who's also a Burnaby City Councillor, and Don Bradley, their communications spinner, nobody there wants to tell me what really is going on. They're taking a bit of a hands-off attitude. I contacted a fellow named Charles Tradd, who's a senior vice president at Acciona at their Vancouver office, and he didn't want to talk either. He said that there was a communications committee that would eventually get back to me. They didn't answer any of my questions. They didn't want to do an interview. They sent me a one-sentence statement that said they're doing their best to try to communicate with District of North Vancouver, but no one wants to tell me whether this project is on time or on budget. My sources tell me it is neither on time nor on budget. It has already gone $78 million over. Back in January, there was a meeting, Metro Vancouver board meeting, where they increased the budget from $700 million to $778 million. They're not being honest over at Burnaby headquarters in Metro Vancouver. There seems to be at least some effort to try to appear to be honest over in Victoria, where there's a similar project, sewage treatment plant there that is gone over budget and is had another $10 million thrown at it. It's got a similar price tag. And at least they've told the taxpayers over there what's going wrong and what the problem is. The problem is that they're facing higher labor costs and higher materials costs. This is a very overheated construction market, and that's what's happening. And here we are with this sewage treatment plant, which is partly brought on by higher standards that have been set federally to clean up our oceans and stop throwing so much sewage out in the ocean. It's a very noble idea. But the questions are they doing it the wrong way, or are they doing it too quickly? And are they doing it without keeping an eye on public dollars? And the evidence that I'm seeing so far of the lack of communications, the lack of being forthcoming on what's going on with taxpayer dollars, shows me that this is a very big boondoggle, and this could actually be a bit of a canary in the coal mine. This is not the most expensive public infrastructure project on the books in the years to come. This is one of the first, in this period of time of the NDP government in Victoria, which is partly funding this as well with our money. that this could have ripple effects on what goes on after this. Of course, the provincial government, TransLink, want to build the Broadway subway SkyTrain extension. They want to build the Surrey SkyTrain extension, which was going to be LRT before Doug McCallum got elected in Surrey. And they also want to build a new Patola Bridge. And this is all very troubling because Acciona, the company that is involved as the design and builder for Metro Vancouver of the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant, is already fast at work as one of the major companies involved in building Site C. And Acciona is also a bidder that was shortlisted for the Patola Bridge. The Acciona bid is a joint bid with SNC Lavalin, a company that's been in the news a lot lately. And I did confirm yesterday with Charles Trad, the Senior Vice President of Acciona, that consultant for Acciona is the former head of SNC Lavalin here in BC, a fellow named Jim Burke, who is an executive vice president of SNC Lavalin, and he was considered by the company to be a member of the president's office. There's someone who has been involved in some major infrastructure projects here in British Columbia, who left the company in 2015 after being there for a better part of a decade and a half. He is now consulting with Acciona, which is involved in some very expensive and controversial infrastructure projects. Site C has gotten a lot of attention, but the North Shore Wastewater Treatment plant has not gotten a lot of attention. It deserves more attention. I'm giving it the attention because there's something wrong there. Projects of this sort do not just get a stop work order from the municipal government every day. That's a very, very rare occurrence. And the fact that Metro Vancouver does not seem to be at least communicating to the public that it has any interest in this project, it's basically deferring to Acciona and saying, well, it's their responsibility to get it done on time. And well, they're not telling the public what they've done to actually protect the taxpayers' assets on this project are. This project could go way off the rails, and which would be a sad thing, although ironic, because it's on the former site of the BC Rail station in North Vancouver.
Why is it whenever we have these mega projects, they seem to stumble when it comes to costs and reporting it? And can't they have contracts where if they go over time and over cost, there are penalties to the company building it?
Well, Ben Flyberg, who is an Oxford professor, has studied this quite extensively, and I've written about it, about his ironclad laws of infrastructure construction and how they go over budgets over time and time again. This is just a problem that just keeps on happening for a number of reasons, and he pinpoints it to the fact that you've got designers and engineers who want to design and engineer something that they can put on their resumes and be proud of forever, a monument to themselves. You've got politicians who want a monument to themselves, something that'll help them get reelected, something that'll help them put union members in jobs. They want something that'll put other people in jobs in the corporations that build them and help their shareholders and eventually get political donations from it. Every part of the whole process, the infrastructure process, seems to take steps away from forgetting who really is paying for it, and that this is for the public benefit and public good in the end. It all becomes this exercise in every aspect of the project being someone or some entity that wants to gain from it, and leaving us, those who are paying for it, behind. And it's not good enough that it is delivered in such a way that it is not on time and on budget, because there are companies that sometimes locate around projects because they want to be there when it opens so they can do business. There are companies that want to do business with the project. There are people that want to work with the project, but their career ambitions are delayed because of the construction not being done on time. And when it comes to these fixed price contracts, I've been told by people who are in the businesses, in the construction or engineering business, people that are in in the legal system, lawyers have told me that essentially a fixed price contract isn't necessarily a fixed price contract, or these contracts that do demand schedules be met aren't very ironclad themselves, because there's a lot of construction lawyers out there who are willing to take up cases and argue that the contract was faulty before the project was faulty. that the government that was funding this may not have told the truth on certain aspects to the contractor that had signed up. These are very, very complex, and part of the problem is, I think, politicians who are overseeing this, should be overseeing the bureaucrats that are dealing with this, are not doing their job. They're not rolling up their sleeves and say, what is going on here, and why is it costing so much, and why is it costing more than it was budgeted, and why is it taking longer, and why aren't you communicating that to the public and being upfront with the public instead of trying to hide the information or hope that there aren't people like me that ask questions about the information. We do need infrastructure for our lives, for our cities. We need roads, we need bridges, we need transit. We need things that aren't very sexy, like sewage plants. It's just the way it is in a growing region, and we also, however, need our politicians and our governments to spend our money as if it is their money. Spend our money as if it is their money as well, and keep an eye on the bottom line, and not let things go out of control, as it looks like things are starting to go out of control in North Vancouver. 2-week stop work order on a project that I was told that even before that stop work order was issued to the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant project, that work had ground down to a halt basically about a month before then. And I was getting word from sources in early January that this project was in severe problems because apparently Acciona had bid under what it actually turned out to cost to build, and that there are construction lawyers already talking to contractors and subcontractors about submitting claims to Metro Vancouver and to Acciona for more money than they had been originally promised. So this is something that I think demands a lot of people's attention, because when infrastructure projects like this, like a sewage plant, go off the rails, then that means that there's less money to spend elsewhere in our economy, less money to spend elsewhere for public services and other types of infrastructure.
Yeah, Bob, sewage isn't sexy, but when it slops onto your shoes, you sure pay attention. We'll have more with Bob right after this.
Vancouver Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, BC's medical health officer, thinks minor drug possession should be decriminalized to help with the opioid crisis. And I believe it might be because people are scared to call for help because they don't want to get busted.
Well, this is a real tough equation because of the damage that it's done to society. There are so many different schools of thought. If you're going to take away the criminal aspect, are you going to deter people from trying it because they think, well, even if I'm caught, I'm not going to be thrown in jail? But at the same time, are you going to allow people who are using these drugs to then have a chance to say, well, if I'm not going to be caught, and if there's less stigma, I can therefore go to get help and get out of this hell that I'm experiencing. This is a very, very complex situation. I think when you do talk about decriminalization of drugs, you do also open up the question that, at least the perception that we have is that the police aren't doing enough to actually catch those who are importing or manufacturing these harmful substances and putting them out in the streets. we had the 4 Pillars plan, which was pioneered here in Vancouver, and one of those pillars was supposed to be enforcement. And we've seen less and less enforcement over the years, and with less enforcement, we've also seen more casualties on our streets, and people would have died as well. And is that connected?
Well, Bob, I mean, if enforcement was everything, in Saudi Arabia, they behead people for selling and using drugs, and they still do it.
Well, here, it's not the using of drugs, perhaps that's the problem. It's those who are bringing it in, the criminal elements who are bringing it into the country, the criminal elements who are manufacturing it in our country, the criminal elements who are addicting people. And then we've seen what happened here in Vancouver with the essentially open market of marijuana retail stores. You know, marijuana did eventually get legalized last year, of course, but for several years before then, stores were popping up, and people who were living near the stores were concerned about what the stores were selling, the quality of what they were selling, and if there were any problems with what they were selling and what people were ingesting. There's a lot of questions about this whole situation, and decriminalization may work, but our governments haven't bought onto it yet because there is public pressure, and there is definitely an element of criminality involved in this. And just by saying it's decriminalized, you're not going to see those criminal elements to suddenly go into another line of business that's a little more honest. So this is something that does deserve to be studied a lot more, but there's got to be ways of offering treatment to people that want it and need it. That should be the priority on one side, and the other priority should be to stop the supply of the harmful drugs that are being put on the streets. That there's very sophisticated criminal networks that we've talked about that have been connected to the casino money laundering, to the real estate industry, part of the whole Vancouver model. And a lot of people don't believe that the police are doing enough to get them off the streets and get them prosecuted through the courts, and that when they do get them off the street and prosecuted in the courts, something seems to go wrong in the prosecution. I think this needs to be part of a wider national strategy to examine the entire criminal justice system and to look at the priorities of Canadians. On one hand, you've got people who are suffering, who need to go through the health system. On the other hand, you've got people who are causing them to suffer, who need to be prosecuted under the full weight of the law.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, before the 420 festival in Vancouver last Saturday, City Hall, the park board, the police seemed to me to be at panic stations. It was going to be a huge disaster. The park would be trampled to death. The people living nearby would choke to death from all the pot smoke. What has happened since then?
Well, we have been left with a ruined field again, just like in previous years. It's fenced off, and they're going to have to reseed it and wait for some rains to come. It's not an easy thing to do because the field, even before this year's 420, bore the scars of the 420 from 2018. The police, I don't think, were panicking at all because this was ka-ching for them. This was a lot of overtime work for them, a lot of easy work for them, and it didn't turn out to be a massive problem from a crowd control standpoint. They mainly got lucky. They got lucky because they basically flooded the area with police. They had a lot of surveillance. They did whatever they could to prepare for and prevent any incident that could have happened by using this as a training exercise. But the cost, well, we'll see what the cost eventually is. What this does do is send a bad message to those who actually do dot all the I's, cross all the T's. The Live Nation, for instance, they got others in the concert and major event industry to write an open letter to the politicians at City Hall and say this wasn't acceptable, that there are businesses that actually who promote and produce events do everything that can and should be done, tick all the boxes, and are transparent to those who actually own the venues. That venue is, owned by us, owned by Vancouverites and British Columbians through our governments, and it is supposed to be shepherded for the good of the community. And just because you've got a mob rule once a year does not mean that Dana Larson and Jody Emery should be excused from doing all the other things that other promoters do. This was not a protest. It used to be a protest. This is not a protest. Protests don't have automated teller machines. Protests don't have the biggest flag at a protest that says ATM. This was a commercial event through and through, where people were there to buy and sell in public for the first time at a 420 event, marijuana, which they couldn't do legally in previous years. Well, now they did it this year. There were about 300 tents and booths that were set up on site that, the money for that went to the promoter. And, you've got damage to the grass. We don't know how much damage entirely there is because we can't see all the damage. Some of the damage could be spilled fuel, for instance, spilled food, spilled drinks. That could have seeped into the field there that could affect the grass. You've got a group that, in some strange way, though, was working with bureaucrats at City Hall and bureaucrats at the Parks Board. You've got a bit of a disconnect there. That as much as some members of Parks Board and City Council were being very vociferous in their opposition to this, you had the bureaucrats that were working there on public time to offer their services to help this event go off, which the event hosts, promoters say that they're paying their bills except for police bills, which they won't pay because it's a protest. The question is, does this reach anywhere near cost recovery for the governments? And just because nothing has happened there in previous years, all the way until 2019, that's a major public problem. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be an incident in the future. This cannot be allowed to happen as is next year, especially when you've got facilities like the Pacific National Exhibition that were offering their venues for this. Of course, they're offering their venues for this 420 event with a whole list of requirements of what the promoters had to fulfill, including insurance. This really has outgrown its purpose. It's outgrown its usefulness. If they want to hold a commercial event again, like the one they held this year, they should be welcome to any public venue that wants to host them, as long as they're willing to adhere to all the requirements. And it seems like they don't want to adhere to the requirements. They want.
You can't be both a commercial production and a protest at the same time.
No, you can't. You can't. That's why I pointed out that the biggest flag there was a sign that said ATM. That shows you where this movement has gone. The movement, they won. They won. The laws were changed, and even before the laws were changed, the law enforcement agencies here in Vancouver basically gave them a blind eye. There were a few busts of some of these marijuana stores, very few in recent years. Most of them were given basically the blind eye treatment. Could open and close on a daily basis, and some were even given special permits by Vancouver City Hall long before the law changed. So this is also pointing to what is traditionally, when it comes to substances that are regulated and taxed by governments, you always get this friction between those who are selling those products and those who are regulating the products. There's a book about the history of liquor sales in British Columbia called Demon Rum or Easy Money by a former professor from Capilano University. Well, that tells you everything. Demon Rum or Easy Money. You've got two sides, two extremes. One side that wants to tightly control the product, and another side that wants to have free reign to sell the product.
And somewhere there's a happy medium.
Yeah, somewhere there's a happy medium. You get one side that is worried about the harms that this can cause from a health standpoint, a social standpoint. And you've got some that are looking at it as a moneymaker, economic developer, and that's we're watching that before our eyes with this new product legalized last October, embodied in the likes of Dana Larson and Jody Emery. Well, the government, which is in the business of actually selling this too, because the liquor distribution branch now is the liquor distribution and cannabis branch. They do have a few stores that are owned and operated by the province, and some that are licensed by the province. They're supposed to be taxed by the province too, and as long as people like Emery and Larson continue to operate in their fashion with unlicensed stores, well, that's tax revenue that isn't flowing back to the province to help pay for any of the social ills. That's why we have this mixed model here in BC for alcohol, and that's why they chose that mixed model for cannabis sales, because they realize that legalization in this fashion and under control is better than the alternative. But at the same time, you got to bring some money in to pay for the social ills. And when it comes to alcohol, for instance, it's almost a wash. There's actually more money spent on hospitals, hospital stays, on court dates and jail stays by people involved with the dark underbelly of alcohol. Well, you'll probably have the same problem in a similar realm with costs mounting for people who don't know when to say when they consume marijuana, for instance, and there's bound to be situations where you'll have people who are stoned and driving. It's just the nature of it, and that's the model that's been chosen has been the government control model, and the government has to stand back and say, look, we've got to govern for all the people, and no special favors for you just because you can call it a protest when it really is not a protest.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of thebreaker.news. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.